I'm Afshin Ratansi, and we're going underground coming up on the show.
The agreement to lift sanctions on Eritrea recognises the improvements in regional peace and security and the positive steps Eritrea has taken to meet the demands of the Security Council.
What's it going to mean for Eritrea that sanctions have been lifted?
Exoneration. Eritrea was falsely accused in 2009 of supporting Al-Shabab and disturbing the peace in Somalia, not accepting the TFG and supporting the UIC, fighting alongside UIC, and a whole lot of unsubstantiated allegations were made then. For the last 9 years, they haven't been able to come up with a single iota of evidence to prove those allegations.
Just for symbol, you see Al-Shabab as part of the resistance, and you support them.
These are Somalis. Are Shabab Somalis? You may disagree with their ideology, you may disagree with their political program, but these are Somalis above anything else. And at the moment, they are fighting for the liberation of Somalia and for the reconstitution of Somalia.
My first question is an obvious one. What sort of relationship do you have with the Islamists fighting in Somalia, Hizbul Islam and Al-Shabaab?
There is a misunderstanding on this issue, and people would like to jump to conclusions on this matter. It's a distortion of the long-term historical relationship with all Somalis. It would be a mistake and a distortion to limit this relationship with one or two groups. That's not true in the first place, but we have to be very clear. We are with Somali resistance. The Somalis have resisted all sorts of interventions. We support all resistance from anyone in Somalia. Somalis have worked with outside forces for money, for fame, for what have you. They have collaborated with outsiders. We are against collaborators. We are with Somalis.
But Al-Shabaab, for example, is regarded as a terrorist organization. Don't you think if you say we support Al-Shabaab, that would put you into conflict with powerful governments?
Now look, putting aside what superpowers or powerful governments think now, you may not agree with the ideology of Al-Shabaab. Somalis may not agree with the ideology of Al-Shabaab, but it's up to them to have their own ideology. You need to respect their choice. Categorizing anyone, political group, as terrorist is not qualified as a common understanding of that qualification. Now, anyone in any government will call an opposition a terrorist organization. One superpower categorizing terrorism, and that qualification is not acceptable to anyone's definition. It's only the United States, and particularly during the previous administration of President Bush, that blew this idea out of proportions. And anyone who disagrees with the United States is a terrorist. Now, do we endorse that idea? We don't share that approach. I mean, we cannot endorse terrorism. No one wants terrorism of any form in any circumstance, but to qualify every resistance as terrorist and try to complicate the main issue or even distort the main issue from ideologies or extremism here or there, especially in Somalia. In Somalia, it's a distortion. It's a clear distortion. In fact, one has to ask very simple questions. It is a categorization of Somalis, or is a categorization coming from outside? And we believe Al-Shabab are part of the political fabric in Somalia.
The West accused Eritrea giving weapons and financial support to Al-Shabab. Is that true?
Now look, I wish we had the resource and we had the ability to support Somali resistance in any way. Physically, it has not been possible. Theoretically, we may want to see that happen. As long as this conflict continues, we remain supportive of the resistance in Somalia in any form.
But one could argue that since the Ethiopians left, there's no good reason why Al-Shabaab would resist to anyone, if you like. I mean, there's a recognized transitional federal government. Who are they resisting?
We have a new government. What is this new government? A government of Villa Somalia, protected by so-called peacekeepers from Uganda and Burundi, who are there to collect their budgets from the United Nations or from someone, and who don't even have a legitimate mandate in Somalia. How long can this continue? How long can you have governments in Villa Somalia imposed by outside forces and reject the choice of the Somali people?
So, just to put it simple, you see Al-Shabaab as part of the resistance, and you support them.
These are Somalis. Are Shabab Somalis? You may disagree with their ideology, you may disagree with their political program, but these are Somalis above anything else. And at the moment, they are fighting for the liberation of Somalia and for the reconstitution of Somalia. Whether Somalia will adopt Sharia or not will have to be left to the Somalis. I don't think we have to demonize Al-Shabaab or any other Islamist organization in Somalia, because the last 4 or 5 years have witnessed the emergence of Islamist tendencies in Somalia as an alternative to the politics of warlords in Somalia. Why was Islam a means of getting out of the vicious circle of clan and tribal conflict led by warlords? Why did Somalis appreciate Islam as a way out of the reality? It's not extremism. It's because of the reality that has brought about devastation in Somalia that Somalis have preferred to adopt Islam as a way out of the reality. There could be extremes here and there, but that does not deny the fact that this is a choice of the Somali people.
The TFG, Sheikh Sharif, the AU, IGAD, the US, EU, you name it, they all accuse your government of supporting the Islamists. Don't you think all these different bodies have a good case against your government? And the Security Council, as I understand, is debating later in the month and on imposing sanctions against your government. Don't you think that will harm your interests?
You have to understand how this process of denouncing Eritrea came about, because it has nothing to do with the reality in Somalia. This was a position of agencies in the previous administration in Washington. People may have missed the logic in the timing of bringing about this government. this government, this so-called transitional government, is a product of the old policies of the administration in Washington. This is the United States doing all this show by using regional umbrellas to promote agendas that are not going to serve the Somalis, that are not going to serve the region. Eritrea becomes a scapegoat because Eritrea was the only country in the region that challenged the invasion of Somalia by Ethiopian troops in 2006 and questioned the legitimacy of governments imposed from outside in behalf of the Somali people, and continues to reject any external intervention in Somali affairs. So you can understand that this is a very obvious move on the part of the United States, which has its own special agenda. And this is not particularly the policy of the present government. It's been a policy of previous governments, even before Bush. For the last 20 years, in the history of the confusion in Somalia, the main actor behind the confusion, invasion, warlordism in Somalia was the United States. Why? It's an obvious question with obvious answers for everyone to know, and what we have seen in the last few months on the level of IGAD or the African Union. It may go to a higher level, but still it's the same show.
Mm-hmm. So don't you think that if the UN Security Council imposes sanction on you, that would seriously harm your development?
It's illegal in the first place. It's illegal. It does not have any legitimacy.
Another meeting on Somalia, yet again held in a foreign capital, Asmara in Eritrea. Somali opposition leaders, calling themselves the Alliance for the Liberation of Somalia, have formed a new coalition, agreeing to set aside their own differences and promising war against the forces that took them from power. They formed a parliament of 190 members.
All Somali sects are present, whether it is the Islamic courts or civil society or others. No one is absent from this conference. Any sect that you can find in Somali society is participating.
The conflict in Somalia has become an international one. There are many foreign fighters on the ground, and the opposition conference in Asmara is seen as a big boost for them. Not only are they benefiting from the support of Eritrea, but they are also showing a unity that has eluded them in the past. Mohamed Ado, Al Jazeera, Nairobi, Kenya.